Hi, BookTube. Welcome to a fiction review, a redo, if you like, because I actually recorded this review a couple of hours ago in a different room, watched the clips again and thought, no, I've rushed this. I haven't said what I wanted to say in a way that I wanted to say it. So I thought we're going to just slow down, have another go. The book that we're going to talk about today is very heartwarming. I'm going to use the UK word homely, which means something different in the United States, I recognize, but I'm thinking of it in the UK sense that means domestic and cozy and comforting. That's what this book is. And I was going to just be glowing in everything I said about it. And then this is the power of hindsight. After I'd finished the book and not looked at it for a day or two, something suddenly came to me and I realized that I did have some small reservations about the novel. Today, we are going to be looking at Welcome to the World, Baby Girl by Fanny Flagg, published in 1998. It's 467 pages, and I have to say, for everyone, for a warning, the text is a little on the small side, so that 467 pages, it will feel like 467 pages. But the style of writing, particularly the way Flagg handles dialogue, is going to, you're going to find it pretty smooth reading. I don't think people are going to see it as a difficult or laborious book to read because of its style. It is a copy that I've had. I have not a receipt, but I'll put it on screen now to interrupt the stats slide. I have a card that was tucked inside the book, and I think this is part of the bookseller's, inventory. It mentions an invoice number, so they obviously had bought a number of copies of Fanny Flagg's book and they were reselling it. I think I bought it in the year 2000. We went to the Hay Festival that year, and I know the shop that this ticket represents used to be in Hay-on-Wye, and they would sell remaindered copies of books that hadn't sold during the festival, and you could pick them up quite cheaply. So I'm sure that's where I got this one. No idea what I say no idea what I paid for it. No idea what I paid for it. There's no price marked in the book. So I could have paid full price, or I could have paid something discounted. This is also one of my winning titles TBR list. For those of you who followed on that was 18 books that I have to read in the next 14 months. And I picked them, I bought them purely because I love their titles. It's not strictly true with Welcome to the World, Baby Girl, because I also knew the author a bit. I had seen Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. But what attracted me was not just the title, but the cover art. The cover that you can see here, posters of this cover were all over the London Underground in 1999. The year after it was published in the US, it probably came out in the UK. And so every time you went traveling, you just saw this book cover again and again and again. And I was entranced by this combination of gray with white with pink. I liked it. It was very soft, very comforting. And I thought, that just looks like a comforting sort of book. And so I think those were my main motivations for buying. Author information. Fanny Flagg was born in 1944. She came from Birmingham, Alabama. Now, she started her career as an actress and a comedian, and you have to be sort of my age or older, although I don't remember her, but never mind. You know what I'm like with television and film, so you can't count me. But somebody my age or older who does watch film and television will know Fanny Flagg as an actress and a comedian. If you saw the film Grease, I think it was the 1977, John Travolta, Olivia Newton-John, Fanny Flagg has a bit part in that film. She's playing Nurse Wilkins. I don't remember the character, but if you've got the film handy, have a watch and see if you can spot her. She was also a regular panelist on the show Match Game from 1973 to 1982. Now, of course, in 1991, her book, Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe, was published, and the rest is history. She also wrote the screenplay for that film adaptation. Okay, Here starts the part where I began to think, my first recording, I became a little unhappy. So let's see if we can have another go. We're going to talk about the setting. One phrase that you could use for the setting in this book is that you are on the move a lot, and yet also not. Let's talk about that. The book begins and returns to the town of Elmwood Springs, Missouri. Now, that's a small American town. You can imagine the kind of thing. There's one main street. It's where everybody shops. The shops are all owned by people who live in the town. Everyone knows everyone and who's related to everyone, and all the stories going back a couple of generations. There we go. It's very Ann Tylerish in that sense. And so you spend some time in Elmwood Springs, a little bit in the 50s, then you jump forward to the 70s, then you might go back to the 50s again. While you're doing this, you're also moving to other parts of the United States, particularly New York. And the reason you're doing all this jumping around is because Dina Nordstrom is the character who matters the most. The story is about her. She is baby girl. And Dina Nordstrom was born in Elmwood Springs, Missouri. Lives there for a few years with her mother, and then mysteriously her mother takes her away, and they move around a lot while Dina is growing up. And then when Dina is 14, she loses her mother. I won't say more about that because that's part of the mystery of the book, and I have to be so careful how I do this review not to give away spoilers. Dina then establishes her own career as a very famous television news personality, but she finds that because she's done all this moving around, she's very unrooted. She can't connect with others emotionally, and she's always trying to hold back. She doesn't appear to have emotions, and she certainly doesn't appear to care about what happened to her in the past. She just clings to this one identity of herself as a famous television personality, even though the job is harming her health. The narration is third person omniscient. So you're going to move through different characters' viewpoints, mainly though Dina Nordstrom's and about half a dozen others. I think there's less than 25 characters in the whole book who are named, and mainly you stay with about 7. But this is the point where I was going to talk about representation, because remember, when I introduced this video last week, I said that I felt as though this book was going to be a good example of how I prefer to have representation. I'll get to that. Right now, let's just talk about one character, because there is only one, let me put it this way. There is only one recognizable Black American character in this novel, and that is Dr. Elizabeth Diggers. Now, she is a therapist. She also uses a wheelchair, as it happens. She doesn't appear in the book until page 132, because Dina is referred to her by another therapist who isn't able to continue working with Dina anymore. And again, can't say more because that's spoilers. The reader sort of knows her first as a therapist. And yes, there's an initial conversation between Dr. Diggers and Dina about race and about ableism to establish where Dina sits on both those topics, but it's very short. I wouldn't say the conversation teaches the reader anything or is trying to direct the reader about what to think about race or ability. And see, I was going to really riff off Dr. Diggers because I liked her as a character. She had an influence. She was the trigger, the catalyst. She wasn't there for the moment when Dina finally came to terms with her past, but her persistence was what meant that Dina finally believed that she needed to come to terms with her past. Representation, however, is interesting in this novel. For that first 132 pages, everything about Welcome to the World, Baby Girl will seem very white bread America. You know, that small Midwestern town. You know there isn't going to be a single non-white face in there, and there is not. When you go to New York, and as it happens, you're only in New York in the 1970s, so you think, okay, we're going to get very diverse now. We're going to start to see some Black American characters, and yet you don't. You're mainly seeing the world through Dina's eyes, and I don't know, is it just because she's white, or is it because she's white and she's famous that she's simply, or what, or is it her? But the black people seem to be invisible, but they must be there. But for all one would know reading this book, until we get to page 132, and we encounter Dr. Diggers, there just don't seem to be any Black Americans. So this is where I began to have my misgivings after I'd finished the book. Let's talk about Dr. Digger. When she first meets Dina, the first thing she says as they settle down is, "How do you feel about me being Black?" And it's a very sort of, question. And it is a test question. Dina's response will determine to Dr. Digger whether they can really carry on as patient and therapist. And you could say all the Black people in this novel are otherwise invisible. And as I was reading on and I understood where the book was going, I thought, that invisibility actually is meaningful. And it is meaningful. So I'm going to give this sort of on the one hand, on the other hand. On the one hand, that invisibility is very meaningful. It's thematically meaningful. Invisibility of Black people, Black Americans, will matter at some point in the story. It will become sort of a moment when you realize what's going on. And then you'll know that the book actually has a lot to say about Black Americans in the 20th century. But we'll come back to the on the other hand. Let's talk about some other aspects of the novel. In general, what the atmosphere of the novel, if you like Anne Tyler's writing, if you've ever read any of her books, then you're going to find Fanny Flagg very similar, and you're going to love it. There's this incredible warmth. And Fanny Flagg likes to get in close with her families, look at all their flaws as well as their strengths, all their weird things that they do. And inevitably, ultimately, Fanny Flagg, like Anne Tyler, likes to come down, I think, in favor of the extended family structure for all its flaws. She still comes down in favor of it as the best way for a person to be provided with a strong identity and to be emotionally grounded. Regarding problematic content, there isn't a lot in this book. I think this is a fairly safe read. There are a couple of medical emergencies, okay, if that bothers you. There is an abandonment scene, and that is probably the toughest bit of the book. That's a full chapter, and I think you need to read it. It's plot essential. And I think I should say that because this is a character-driven novel, but it's not unplotted. It achieves a certain balance between you getting to know the characters closely, but there's still being a sense of story, of structure, of building up to something that is of utmost importance, and then everything falls into place for the ending. But I really don't. There is one sex scene, but I'm using sex scene. I mean, there's two sentences telling you that it's happening, but not saying exactly what. You just know it went on, and that's it. So again, I just don't think there's going to be a lot of material in this book that will disturb a more sensitive reader. And like Anne Tyler, you're going to see a lot of humor. And what I loved about Fanny Flagg's book in particular was that the humor mainly centered around the romance. There is a romance subplot. And before you go, ooh, some people love romance and other people are a little bit wary because they think that it will get a little bit too sentimental. That is not the case with this book. Well, perhaps toward the end, it begins to head towards sentimental. But I think Fanny Flagg always keeps it real by having us laugh at the couple throughout their time getting to know each other. And I'm going to read you a passage because I just think it's a good example of how Fanny Flagg, perhaps because she was an actress, she really does know how to set a scene. So you get the color and the dialogue is really good and sharp, and you can really see it in your mind as if you were watching a film. So here we are. And we're reading from page 224 of the 1998 paperback edition. Jerry was about 20 miles outside of Elmwood Springs and still a little nervous and shaky when, going 10 miles over the speed limit, he passed a Missouri highway trooper. The trooper slugged down the last of his coffee and took the last bite of his maple donut. turned on his siren, and started after the offending vehicle. Jerry heard the siren, looked in his rearview mirror, and his heart stopped. There was not another car for miles around. For a split second, he wondered if he should try and make a run for it, but he was a good citizen, so he just groaned and pulled over. The trooper, a big man, got out, coughed, and walked slowly over to the car. "Good morning," he said pleasantly. As soon as the trooper looked in, he wondered what in the world he had stopped out here on Interstate 34. Jerry tried to sound normal. "Good morning. What's the problem, officer?" "Could I see your registration and driver's license, please, sir?" "It's a rented car. I rented it this morning in Kansas City, and my license is in the back seat, in my jacket. Can I get it?" The trooper was taking no chances. "How about stepping out of the car for me, please, sir?" Jerry got out, opened the back door, and took his license out of his wallet and handed it to the trooper, who read it and said, as calmly as possible under the circumstances, considering his white male perp had on pantaloons and shoes that curled up on the ends with bells on them, looking as if he had just fallen off a parade float somewhere. "Wait right here for me while I run a check on your license." Jerry stood by the car, praying that nobody would drive by, but of course they did, and all the cars and one truck slowed down while the drivers stared. A few minutes later, the trooper came back. "Well, you don't seem to be much of a criminal, other than speeding on the interstate a few minutes ago." He handed Jerry his license. "Thank you. Could I please get back in the car?" "Sure. Go ahead." Jerry's shoes jingled when he got back in. The trooper said, "We don't get too many men wearing pink tights out here in Jefferson County. So I'd like to know if there is some reason you're wearing that rig, or is that just how you guys in New York dress?" It's a long story." "Well, I'm in no hurry. I'm not going anywhere." Jerry said, "Look, are you married?" "Yep. Nobody escapes that out here. I got caught and hog-tied just like the rest of them." "Why?" "Well, then you know today is Valentine's Day." The trooper looked at him, waiting. "Yeah?" "I'm sure you must do something special for your wife, to surprise her. She gets a card out of me every year, but that's about all the fuss I make. If I was to show up dressed in that, she'd think I was 2 bricks short of a full load. I just flew down here to surprise my, the one I hope will be my girlfriend." The trooper nodded. "Yeah, I should have figured right off there was some female involved. You're a 35-year-old man, and she's got you dressed up like a circus show dog, son." I could have kept on reading, because the scene just gets funnier, but I thought, I don't want this video to go on it's probably already going to be too long, so we're going to just keep it down. But you can see her sense of humor, and it's really sharp. The dialogue is really good. I think she's fantastic with dialogue. Okay, so let's deal with this on the other hand. The thing that bothered me, my reservation, the hindsight that I had when I finished the book. I was going through the structure of the story in my mind about Dina, who begins life with unable to connect with anyone, seemingly cut off from her own emotions, strangely emotionless about the fact that she lost her mother when she was only 14 years old and an only child, and living somewhere where there were no other relatives close by. Just doesn't sound right. So something's wrong. She goes to Dr. Diggers. Dr. Diggers begins to poke at her, not very successfully at first, to try to come to terms with her past. Now, that past, who her mother is, when all this is found out, it's an astounding find out. And it opens up the invisible bit in the book, if I can put it that way. I can't say more without giving too much. But suddenly the invisible is visible, and it's brilliant. The climax is absolutely brilliant. What bothered me wasn't the book up until that point. It actually was how it settled down after that, because it did settle down. And the ending felt like the beginning when we were in Elmwood Springs, Missouri in the 1950s. And it's just idyllic, and everybody's lovely, but also everybody is white. And there's just, and there's something a little bit, I don't know, Stepford Wives. I don't know why that's come to my mind, but there's something uneasy about it. The book takes you to a point at its climax where that invisibility, it's not possible anymore. It's done. And Dina is personally affected by that opening up, that making the invisible visible. That affects her identity. And I just didn't feel that the ending reflected entirely who Dina would probably become as a result of what she learned. And that's an opinion. I'm not saying that's absolute, but you know what I don't know, is there a Black booktube creator out there? I'm literally calling out. Is there a Black booktube creator out there who has read Fanny Flagg's Welcome to the World, Baby Girl? And would they like to have an opinion? Because I'm just curious whether they feel that Dina Nordstrom at the end of the book, whether that was the Dina Nordstrom she should have been, considering what she learned about herself. Right, that's enough, everybody. I'm sure I've gone on long enough to give you a sense. Hopefully that still whetted your appetite, but you can see that big question mark in my mind, so I'm interested to hear some other opinions, very, very much so. I don't have any recommended or follow-up reading, except more Fanny, Flagg, and Tyler. They're all that kind of a thing. Now, next time I'm doing a tag that's not a tag. It didn't start out as a tag, but people are treating it as a tag. And Meg at Books Off the Beaten Path, she did this non-taggy tag, and I liked how she did it, because she was fantasizing, because this particular tag allows you an unlimited amount of money. That's always exciting, isn't it, to fantasize about what one would do if one had unlimited money. And she started talking about how she would like to come visit England. Well, of course, that was exciting. And go to London and then she couldn't remember the name of the book town. And I jumped right in there. I thought, where I have spent so many holidays. I said, hey, on why? Well, Meg, I'm going to do this non-taggy tag, and you're going to see how we get on. It's going to be really cool. You're going to love it, I promise. And there'll be some other newsy bits in there as well. It'll be a little, my usual thing now with tags. Other things slip in while I'm tagging, if that makes any sense at all. Right, everybody. Good luck with wherever you are right now with your February reading. If you're having a tough time, just hang in there. Be okay. Or if you have to DNF a book, well, maybe you do. I can't see the book, so I can't comment. Okay. But everybody, carry on. Keep your head up. All that stuff. And until I talk to you again, take care. Bye-bye.